Former U.S. President Donald Trump has made his first public appearance since the assassination attempt against him on Saturday. Trump walked into the Republican National Convention to rapturous applause with his ear that was injured in the shooting covered in a white bandage. The convention has completed the formalities of the nomination of Trump as the presidential candidate for the party. Trump has also chosen his running mate for November's general elections. Ohio Senator JD Vance is Trump's pick for vice presidential candidate. The 39-year-old former Silicon Valley venture capitalist had been a critic of the former president, but has since become a loyal ally. DW's Washington bureau chief is at the Republican convention, and she got the reaction to Vance's nomination.
Donald Trump's nomination as the presidential candidate on the first day of the Republican National Convention was expected. The focus was on the question whom he would pick for vice president. The excitement from the delegates was strong when they learned it would be JD Vance.
I think it's amazing. I like him a lot. I think he's very smart. I think he's got a wide range of popularity, and I think he'll attract a lot of people that maybe Trump, he's younger, that maybe Trump would have had a hard time with. So I think it's wonderful.
With his upbringing that he had in the Appalachian Mountains and things like that, he is the common man that went to Washington, rather than he was not a product of Washington. That's why I like him.
Senator Vance is a man I think is perfect for the role. We need someone with youth and vigor in the Republican Party, such as myself. And I'm glad that Donald J. Trump has decided to take a young senator and make him his VP. I have nothing but great hopes for him as our vice president.
I personally like DeSantis or Mario Rubio, but what I care is that Trump gets reelected.
There is more younger conservatives now than there's ever been. There is, people are rejecting the woke liberal ideology at levels we've never seen. So I think having a younger person to represent that group is the best thing that could ever happen.
Well, J.D. Vance, let's face it, he's a lot like Donald Trump. Maybe he's a logical successor.
Donald Trump would be 78 years old if he wins back the White House. This would keep JD Vance just a heartbeat away from the presidency. For many people around the world, this scenario raises concerns as Vance is strongly against supporting Ukraine, opposes foreign aid, and takes a tough stance on Iran. Concerns many of the members of the party don't share.
Because he's young, he's conservative, he's come from a family where he started from the bottom, he's worked his way up to the top, he's got young children, so he understands the values that America needs today.
Let's cross over to our correspondent, Janelle Dumalaon in Washington. Janelle, thanks for joining us. Donald Trump has made his first public appearance after surviving that assassination attempt. So what was the mood like? What was it like in this first appearance?
Indeed, he walked into the RNC on day one with that big white bandage on his right ear. We've learned that he has lost part of that ear in the assassination attempt. He did not speak, though. He did not take the stage. He simply sat or stood in the crowd and let the cheers and the adulation wash over him from his supporters. But we know that the assassination attempt is still very much fresh on the minds of these supporters, and we know that because amid the cries of "We love Trump," we also heard them say "Fight, fight, fight." Famously, the words that Donald Trump said in that scene where he raised his fist after the assassination attempt with his face bloodied and turned to his crowd of supporters. So this tells us that "Fight, fight, fight" has become a campaign slogan right up there with "Make America Great Again."
And Trump was also side by side for the first time with the man he chose as his running mate, Senator JD Vance. And what can you tell us about him?
Senator JD Vance, freshman senator from Ohio. He is 39 years old, and he was a never Trumper in 2016 who has clearly had a change of heart. He's known to hold very conservative views, among them on abortion access, but he's also very much an America First kind of guy in terms of being unwilling to support further aid to Ukraine. So to many observers, JD Vance really does seem to represent the new generation of MAGA, a break away from old school established republicanism, and it's clearly an interesting choice that Donald Trump has made.
It does seem to be part of the appeal. I think with Vance in the running, it would bring down the average age of candidates by about 20 years or something like that. That must be part of Trump's calculation here.
Indeed, it is, Amian, but I also think, just as an aside, that the reason he's had to pick a new VP in the first place is that, if you recall, his old running mate, Mike Pence, he can't really count on Mike Pence anymore ever since January 6th, when Trump supporters called for Mike Pence to be hanged, so he clearly had to pick someone else this time around. And he did pick someone who is younger, and even younger than who his opponent would be, Kamala Harris. He's a full 10 years younger than her. But also worth noting that he has other things going for him in terms of the vice presidency. He's from Ohio. That is a battleground state. He's thought to be vital for getting those Rust Belt votes. And as you pointed out, he does represent a younger generation. He also has access to the Silicon Valley donor base at a time where the Trump campaign really can use funds. So all of those factors spoke in his favor, and I guess that is why Donald Trump chose him to be his running mate.
Janelle Dumalaon in Washington for DW. Thank you. And for more, let's cross over to Daniel Kreiss, an associate professor at the School of Media at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Thanks for joining us. So, Ohio Senator JD Vance, he's now on the 2024 ballot as former President Donald Trump's running mate and now his vice presidential pick. So what message would you say that this sends about Trump's campaign this time around?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think broadly what this suggests is Trump is looking for a young political firebrand, a candidate who very much has been aligned with Trump's overall message, whether that's on immigration or a stolen 2020 election. JD Vance has proven time and again to be a very reliable surrogate and defender of the president in Congress.
And President Joe Biden, his campaign chair, labeled Vance and his views as extreme. What would you make of that?
Well, I think anybody who denies the results of a free and fair election is extreme. It's an anti-democratic extremist to try to prevent the peaceful transfer or the holding of power. So, broadly, just from a social science perspective, from a small d Democrat perspective, anytime a candidate or any party leaders reject the results of free and fair elections, it's very dangerous terrain for democracies to be in.
This interesting perspective on this is the political science, the angle there that denying the results of a free and fair election is extreme. I could see that perspective. On the other hand, Trump had a choice of perhaps more extreme characters within the Republican Party. Vance was actually a critic of Trump in the beginning, saying that Trump was taking America to a dark place. So you don't see any sign here that there is some version of moderation on Trump's ticket?
Well, I mean, there were certainly many other choices that were less extreme. There are many Republicans, for instance, who looked at the 2020 election and said Trump lost. Mitt Romney is a great example. The person who ran strongest against Trump Nikki Haley is another great example of somebody who I think would be a clear voice of moderation within the Republican Party, that we need to embrace democratic norms, that we need to get back to free and fair elections, which every court in the United States has said that we have. And we need to be able to continue to not demonize our opponents. All of which I think the selection of JD Vance sort of rejects, which is the voice of more democratic moderation in the party.
And it's pretty amazing that all of this is happening not even 2 full days after an assassination attempt on Trump. How do you think, briefly if you could, this might affect his campaign in the next 3.5 months?
Well, the assassination attempt was a horrific act of political violence. And I think what we need now are members of both parties to become statesmen and stateswomen, and to clearly reject anti-democratic violence, anti-democratic rhetoric, including political violence, including attempts to undermine public confidence in the election system. So I would hope that Trump really embraces free and fair elections, and I hope that we turn back the anti-democratic tide that's growing in the United States.
Daniel Kreiss from the University of North Carolina, thanks very much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me.